From the time I call your name, you've got 2 minutes. And then after 2 minutes, we'll say stop.
How does this thing work?
And that allows us
How does
to
this
get
work?
through all the books. So you have 2 minutes, 120 seconds. Okay?
All right. What's up?
Just a reminder,
Say hi, Sean.
final exam is here on Monday.
You're gonna watch.
So the final exam is here on Monday. I'll be here at 3:30 with the exams. You don't have to be here at 3:30. If you want to do it before launch, that's fine. Some people want to start a little early. Okay?
Is that when like the final journal thing is due?
Yeah, the final journal stuff is due soon. The final journal entry. I don't know the exact day. Maybe it's Monday or Tuesday. Your final group project assessment. You know, how did it go? That's okay. Questions before we begin? Do they? Okay, 2 minutes, huh? The first one is book number 1. Why? So what's high family? Oh, group 9. Group 9?
So we have book type in mind. It's probably the easiest one to summarize, especially since at the very beginning of class we did our Myers-Briggs test. I'm not exactly sure what we can really say to it. There's 16 different combinations. You have what are they again? Yeah, I don't want to listen to it again. Anyone have any questions about it?
Just about the MBTI.
There's one thing they did mention though, where they talked about how you are a specific type. You're always going to be that type. You're not going to be able to change it. However, you can adapt to situations and be able to build up certain things that you struggle with. But you'll always be a certain type.
How many seconds do we have left?
Time. Group 14, drive.
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay, so book drive is about motivation. The different types of motivation. Motivation 1.0, what motivates us, like food, water, sex. Motivation 2.0. It's the sticks and carrot model where you have a reward to incentivize you to get something done, and the stick is to prod you forward. So it's a reward or punishment kind of streak. Then there's a motivation 3.0. It's a lot more flexible. It's better with it's like creativity. It's a little bit more open-ended. Things such as allowing for, you can come in when you want, as long as you get the work done, have maybe 20% time where you can work on your own projects. And this is what's intrinsically motivating versus intrinsically motivating you, whereas the other ones are extrinsic.
What are the 3 elements? Yeah.
What is autonomy, purpose, mastery? Autonomy.
Autonomy, mastery, purpose. So like different types of autonomy, task, time, team, technique, different types of mastery, mindset, pain, the asymptote.
We also talked about we can pay people more than average, so people don't have to worry about their compensation too much, and they can focus on what they want to do. So they will, by doing so, they will attract more talent, reduce turnover, and boost productivity.
Thank you very much. Group 5, endurance. Hooray, thank you, drive. I'm excited, I'm motivated now.
We're just going to go back here.
So Endurance was an expedition led by Sir Ernest Shackleton, 1914. It went to the Antarctic, and it failed. They were stuck in the actual boat for about a year. They got stuck in January 1915. They survived for 2 years. There were 28 crewmen. Nobody died. Pretty important maybe on this test. So nobody died. The boat was called the Endurance, and that's from the family motto, which was "By endurance we conquer." They ate their own dogs.
Okay.
They made it so they went to Elephant Island after they had their boat crushed. They all went to Elephant Island. Shackleton then led the crew of 5 aboard the James Caird through the Drake Passage and reached South Georgia Island, which was about 650 nautical miles.
Took 2 men over the first overland journey of the island, and then after they got there, it took them 3 months to get back to the men left on Elephant Island to rescue them. That's everything.
What color were Shackleton's eyes?
Trivia. You're not gonna ask us trivial questions.
Blue?
I could got it.
I think they covered a lot of good stuff that's on the exam though, if you listen close. That's pretty good. Okay, thank you very much. You see, group 1, the 5 dysfunctions of a team.
South Georgia Island.
So this one's about a company called Decision Tech. And it gets a new CEO. Her name is Catherine. At first, a lot of people don't like her because the first couple of weeks she just seems to observe and doesn't really do anything. She has them all go to a retreat in Napa, California, where they start talking about why, as a company, they're dysfunctional. And she's writing up what they are. Basically, the bottom of the pyramid is an absence of trust. That the people there didn't trust each other, didn't work well together. Then she said there was fear of conflict. When they had meetings, they didn't really discuss anything. There was no debate. So there's lack of commitment, where each group didn't really worry about getting their stuff done because no one really checked up on them. So they weren't that dedicated to accomplishing their supposed. That kind of goes along with the absence of accountability as well too. There's no one to check up on them, so they didn't really bother getting anything done. And then the top one is inattention to results. So they weren't really connected in different departments. They didn't really know what was going on in other departments. And they started putting these into practice and started having meetings where they did debate, and then they were able to change the company completely and have it more successful.
Like mainly, the pyramid to talk about this.
I've tried to implement this in my capstone teams, I think these are important things. Holding people accountable, knowing what other people are doing, everybody being responsible to achieve the goal, not just their individual goals. Absence of trust. I think they're good things. Thank you very much. Hooray! Group 4, hot, flat, and crowded.
Alright, we're also gonna do them better. So we did hot, flat, and crowded. Basically, the whole premise of the book is that the world has a finite number of resources. We're burning through those resources, especially resources like oil, natural gas, etc. Burning through those really quickly. And because of the number of people around the world that are adopting the American mindset of I want everything, pretty much the world's going to hell. So that's why.
The hot, flat, and crowded. Hot is just the global warming idea, which he talks a lot about, introducing green technologies into industry and things like that. The flat part is just the idea of globalization, which he was talking about, everybody wants to be like America because we're the ideal society. And then crowded is just we have way too many people and not enough resources for everything that we want as consumers.
Oh, he offers what he refers to as solutions, which aren't really solutions because a lot of them are ridiculous, like trying to improve efficiency of, I don't know, coal burning power plants by like 30%, which I'm pretty sure if that was actually the case, we would have done so already. Like we could really do it easily. So anyways, we didn't really like the book, but those are some of the main issues. So what was the book? Hot, Flat, and Crowded.
Group 15, ethics for the new millennium.
No, I don't need
The Dalai Lama book, huh?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, no one in our group really read this one. We all just took a hit on the points, but this is what the internet says. Ethics for the New Millennium is addressed to a general audience. It presents a moral framework based on universal rather than religious principles. It rests on the observation that those who conduct an ethically positive, those who conduct, I copy and pasted it. Okay, anyway, basically what the book says is ethics should be based on spirituality, but spirituality is not necessarily based in religion, because the world is becoming globalized, as they talked about. So now we have all these different religions that are communicating with each other on a global level. So now we can't say, you're wrong because my religion says you're wrong. We have to have spirituality, which is just acting ethically on behalf of everybody. So it's kind of out there, that's why no one really read it. It's hard to understand, but basically treat people nicely, act in the benefit of society in general, and just be a good person. But don't base that in your religious beliefs because not everyone has that. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Great.
this is all.
Group 11, how will you measure your life?
Alright, so this book was by Clayton Christensen, who graduated from BYU and went to Harvard Business School. He's a professor there now, and he talks about various issues in his book. Basically, there's three important ones. It's how to find satisfaction in your job, happiness in your family, and also stay out of prison. So those are basically the three main points that he makes in his book. But so about the family, what are you talking about that?
Yeah. So basically, highlight of talking about family. Take care of your family. Like, keep involved with your family even when things are going well, because when a problem comes up, it's often too late to take care of it right then and there. Basically, what he was saying.
I agree. Then we also talk about prison.
Said that there's no signs on the way to hell. Pretty much sums it up. Like, if you start making wrong decisions, there's not going to be someone that slaps you upside the head to tell you. So you just need to realize that it's slowly that you make your way there. So just don't bend your morals and don't make the little decisions that will lead you there.
Perfect. And then he also had this really cool comparison about how we have to identify responsibilities in our own lives, what we need to do. And he poses the question, what did you hire the milkshake for? And it was right then.
Yeah, he talked about a milkshake, how a company wanted to better their milkshakes, and they kept changing flavors and sizes and things like that. But then they finally went and interviewed people, and they asked, what job is this milkshake accomplishing? And people said it's something for me to eat on my way to work. So they changed it to make it thicker, and they met the job. And so he talks about how we can do that in our own lives. What job am I hiring something in my life to do, and then tailor that so that it will accomplish that job instead of trying to make it what you think it needs to be.
And the last point was he talked about strategies, and this is with all of us. I think it's the most applicable maybe. He talks about finding a job. He says that there's a difference between deliberate and emergent strategies. His deliberate strategy when he graduated was to go and be a writer at Wall Street, but then something else came up, and so he went with that other strategy called an emergent. So we shouldn't have our sights set and locked in. We should pay attention for emergent strategies that appear, other opportunities that he talks about.
Great.
T, abundance.
No, but I'm
Be really easy.
Alright, so abundance is pretty much the opposite of hot, flat, and crowded. Pretty much talks about the world's SOL, but you still have options. I mean, it's really, it kind of starts a key thing. It talks about perspective. So it talks about aluminum. Talks about way back in the day, there was a guy that made aluminum, and then a king killed him. And so no one knew where it was, but they thought it was super precious. They thought like it was more precious than gold. But turns out like it's one of the most abundant things there is. Like what it takes to make aluminum is one of the abundance. So once they found out how to make it easily, suddenly aluminum was cheap compared to precious metals. And so pretty much abundance just talks about that. It talks about, well, your problems with water. Well, it talks about, well, if you can learn how to, forgot the exact word, but get the salt out of water, then you have all the water you could ever need. It talks about just the opportunities for power, the different powers that we have, and how we can maximize off of those. But pretty much overall, as far as it has to do with leaders, it said that successful companies are successful because the leaders have perspective. They're able to think outside the box and not be shut into just the way the world thinks. They're able to kind of broaden their views and look to different solutions. So there you go.
Group 6. First, break all the rules.
Okay, I'm just going to read it from here. So, first, break all the rules. It's a book that goes against the traditional norms of hiring people to work for you. It talks a lot about talents, and it says that the definition of talents is a recurring pattern of thought, feeling, or behavior that can be productively applied. So it says not everyone is the same, so don't treat them that way. Everyone has a different talent, so you can use those talents for the benefit of your company. Also talks about how not to rush people to get promoted, because once you promote someone to a certain point, they might become incompetent at that new skill set. There are different questions that want to be asked of people that were working in different companies. These questions were, do I know what is expected of me? Do I get to do what I do best? Does anyone at work care about me? Do I have equipment to do the job? Do I receive recognition for good work? Does someone encourage my development? So a lot of books focus on how to be a good manager. Great managers, let's see, they don't try to remodel people. They put people where they think they will do best, rather than trying to change them. It talks about how people really can't change that much. They mostly stay the same, and to simply work on with their talents. Talks about how managers are the catalyst for speeding up reaction between employees' talents and the company's goals. It also talked about the difference between great leaders and great managers, and how great managers are more of an internal influence in the company, whereas great leaders are more of the visionary, the outward look for a company. It also talked about how low-level jobs, talked about like maids that are cleaning hotel services. Their talents are just as important as someone that's higher up, like an engineer. And it talked about how people shouldn't hide their weaknesses to try and get a job, because if they did get that job and they find out that they're not very good at it, that's not gonna help them. Managers are to help people have their talents become performance. Some temptations that managers go through. Number one way is perfect for everyone. Number 2, people aren't smart enough to figure things out for themselves. Number 3, people must earn my trust. So good managers want to make sure that they have accuracy and safety, that they stay within the standards of the company. The creed doesn't overshadow the message, and they don't make steps for customer satisfaction. They do whatever they can to satisfy their customers. Let's see, anything else? Oh yeah, they spend more time with their best in their company rather than focusing all their time with those that aren't doing very well. And it also talked about broadbanding, which is paying for performance and not necessarily your position. Just because you get promoted doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna get paid more. It's based upon how you do in your position.
Group 12, the unwritten laws of engineering. Oh, yeah. Small but spicy.
Yeah, it's a pretty small book, but a lot of it really is just common sense, at least that's what it seems. But I think it is still an important book because common sense isn't necessarily common, so we just made a little summary of the points that they went over.
Some of the things it talks about, it starts off with demonstrate the ability to get things done. Have some initiative, be resourceful, be persistent. Another key point is follow up often. If you want to get the job done or make sure you get the results you want, you have to follow up and make sure everything's going well. Develop a let's go see attitude. Be curious about things and learn new things.
So I was hesitant for this one because I'm not an engineering major. I know a lot of you guys are, but it turns out a lot of these points will work for any career you go into. So I'm going to share some that I found I feel like work for any career. The ones that I liked a lot. The however menial and trivial your early assignments may appear, given your best efforts, that goes for any job. You might start at the bottom of the ladder, but work really hard and it'll be noticed by your superiors. Don't be timid, speak up, express yourself, and promote your ideas. That goes for anything as well. Do not try to do it all yourself, so delegate. One of the most valuable personal traits is the ability to get along with all kinds of people. That works awesome for everything. And then beware of what you commit to writing and who will read it are the ones that I like for any career.
And just some other ones that I found interesting. It talked about working in a group and working to keep on schedule or even ahead of schedule if that is possible. Getting to a point where you feel comfortable that you can tell your team, okay, we're going to back off a little bit and see how things play out, or we're going to work on some other things. Just being able to work efficiently in everything that you do.
Thank you. Group 10, Pathfinders. A global history of exploration. How many groups read this book? Not very many, okay?
Yeah, so we read the whole book from beginning to end. This is a very interesting book because it talks about how you have, men that originated from Africa, and they stayed there for a long time. And once trade started opening up a little bit, it drove exploration. And that's what you find behind most exploration is someone looking for a way to put trade, so they can have more trade and get more things across. So that's kind of interesting. Another thing in the book that we see a lot is societies, they think that they know everything. Like they know the way to get to this one place. They know there's no more than, there's a limit. There's all these limits that we make up in our minds. But the thing about exploration is finding a new path or a new way to get something done. And so that's what a lot of the major exploration was, is finding a new way. Columbus found a way to get to the Americas, but he was looking for a trade route to India. And this drove a lot of the exploration. And so not always do we explore and find things the way that we expected, but in exploring we'll find things that can be useful. And that was another thing that happened a lot during the book. Now we've discovered a lot of things, and so we're just trying to figure out how to, we're kind of in the position where there's more out there, but we don't know what it is. And so, with time, trade, and all that will help drive that, so we'll discover more.
Thank you. Group 3, good to great.
So the main focus of our book was there are a lot of good companies out there that are successful in their markets, but great companies are the ones that are only successful for a moment, that stay successful for a long time. So we're just talking about what it takes to become one of those great companies. It said that there are 7 main principles that get you there. The first couple kind of involve a building up process that you see there, where you might not see results at first, but it really changes the culture of your company. And the last couple of then they show the breakthrough and actual results. First, in order to have the build up, you have to have disciplined people. And so the principles she's doing it right now are those that talk about disciplined people. Then it talks about disciplined thoughts. Once you have the right people involved and you have disciplined thought, you're focused on the things you want to get done. And then disciplined action is the last one, the last main principle. And that's just making sure that you get your disciplined thought and you actually carry it out and are effective in doing it. Sub-principles and help you do that. The first one is you have to have a level 5 leader. That essentially means you have a leader that doesn't care about their ego, they just care about results. And so they are willing to help other people grow and progress, and they don't really care about their own. Also getting the right people on the bus, making sure that you have the right people in your company, that you have them in the right places. You might have talented people that aren't just good at their jobs, but they can do other jobs better. And so making sure you have the right people is important. Being willing to confront the brutal facts. Sometimes you don't want to face failure, but until you face failure, you can't face success. Having a headshot concept, meaning you know what your main goal is going to be. Having a culture of discipline really helps you get things done. And then technology accelerates, and once you have the right culture, then technology can take a good idea and make it a great idea. Big thoughts.
Group 7, The Anatomy of Peace.
Good to great.
It's good. I was wondering if that was good.
Okay, so the anatomy of peace, kind of like a sequel to Leadership and Self-Deception, if anybody read that one. Who read that one, by the way? Leadership and Self-Deception? Good. So they're going to talk about it, so I'll skip a little bit of what they're going to talk about, because this kind of explains a little bit more in depth on what leadership and self-deception explains. And it's about a man named Lou and how his son is committed, he was in drugs and dealing drugs and stuff like that. He was not doing things great. And so in this book, he is sent to a behavioral reformation camp, and but they also ask for the parents to be there. And there's several people as well, several characters, and it helps you understand a little bit about how we justify ourselves in everything that we do. And if we don't do something that we feel that we should do, we begin justifying ourselves, and then our world around us seems different. We think it distorts our vision about how we really are and how we see the world around us.
So they call that in the book being in the box, and so this triangle represents how to help people change. And so the first step, having a heart at peace, is being out of the box. So not having a distorted view of people. And all of these steps here, hopefully you can read this, maybe. But all these steps here.
They're kind of hard to read.
It's kind of hard to read.
Yeah, you can just say them out loud.
Okay, so the bottom one is heart at peace, and that's kind of being outside of the box. And then the one up below that is building relationships with those that have influence. So, for example, in this story, he wanted to help his son. So, building relationships with people that his son is friends with is the next step. Then building relationship with the actual person themselves. And then the next one is listening to the person that you're trying to help and trying to change and learning from them. And then after that is teaching and communicating. And all of these first 5 steps deal with helping the person do things that are going right rather than focusing on the negative. And only the top one focuses on the negative, and that is correcting things that are going wrong. So a big main idea of the book, I guess, was just really focus on the things that are going right, and then focusing a little bit on the things that are going wrong.
One more thing I wanted to add about the difference between this book and Leadership and Self-Deception is that it goes a little bit more in depth into what kind of boxes, right, we carry around with us. And it mentions 4 different types. It mentions the better than box, when we view ourselves as superior and view others as inferior. The view of the world, we view it as competitive, or that it needs you, that you feel in
Time's up.
Okay.
Group 13, Leadership and Self-Deception.
As I am the spokesperson, is because they said I will thus speak. So, we wrote leadership, or we're talking about Leadership and Self-Deception, which is the sequel to The Anatomy of Peace, and talks about a lot of the same things, except in a corporate setting. So it talks about being in the box again. Doesn't quite go into all the detail of the multiple types of boxes, just the notion that there is a box and that it's not very good. It does also go into a few details about how being in the box can really wreak havoc with the corporate environment. That often when multiple people are in a box, you're going to get collusion. Isn't that what they call it? And so people want to be justified, so they get other people to come join them in their justifiedness. And essentially, that's how World War I started. And it's not good to have World War I in your office environment. So, yeah.
So getting the box just kind of starts by betraying what you feel you should do, and just treat people like objects, not like people. When you try to get out of the box, you're usually not going to be able to do it. You have to do it naturally. There you go.
Thank you. Group 8, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Well, mostly this book talked about if you want to have people be friendly towards you, you should be friendly towards them. Some of the concept that it said is that you shouldn't tell people that they're wrong. If you tell them that they're wrong, they're going to disagree with you, and nothing you say will make them change their mind. And so if you want to convince someone of something, you want them to say yes to things. Ask them questions that they will agree with, and that will help them realize what you're trying to show them.
It's also really important to be sincere to people. A lot of the times people will feel when you're being insincere, and they'll know that you're just kind of faking it, and they will be less open to helping you with anything that you might need. It's also important to remember people's names, because that just shows that you care about them, and you made the effort to remember who they are. And you should listen to others and make them feel important, and also do unto others what you would like them to do to you.
One thing as well, Charles Schwab was the first guy in America to pay $1 million a year. So the way he did that, the way he performed with these steel companies, just wood, I think it was just wood, wasn't it? He just encouraged people by giving them a goal to better the morning crew from the evening crew and so forth. So again, giving people goals, not to forcing them, but just giving them like a little incentive. Also talked about how if somebody's, for instance, there's a secretary who couldn't spell very well, so her boss just came out and said, there's a couple of words I don't understand myself. How do I get the correct spelling for it? And since that point, she always spelled correctly. So things like that. And also, there's a guy who had the quote, I think, from the Bible. Well, it was from Shakespeare, but Carnegie knew what the quote was. He knew it wasn't right or something, and he called him out, and it's a bad thing. So sometimes you just gotta if someone's in the wrong, let it happen, because they're on top of the world, and they feel great when you just support them, but then you can sort of like re-quote that later down the line, and they'll correct themselves from it. So never try and put someone on the spot, because they'll always fight against you. So always put people first.
That's the worst summary I've ever heard.
It's a shame.
I'm just kind of showing you how not to do things. Great, Paul. Very good. Thank you. Group 2, the happiness advantage.
The happiness advantage title, the 7 principles of positive psychology that fuel success as well as at work, written by Sean Bakar, I guess is how I pronounce it. And in this book, he challenges the conventional wisdom that you need to work hard, have success, and success will bring happiness. This book explains how that's actually backwards, that thought pattern. Happiness fuels success, and which makes sense because if you are in a class that you enjoy the topic of, you typically are happier and you typically do better. Not saying it's easier, it's just you enjoy the topic. The author draws on positive psychology in this book and principles and actionable methods that will change your behavior so that you can have this positive attitude more frequently in other areas. If you break down the core goal of this book, it's that we should be happy for who we are and what we've already achieved. The author is not saying that we shouldn't work for success or set goals. He's just basically saying that that should not be our end point. It's not what that's not what's going to make us happy. We should work for it, but just be happy for what we have. He also talks about how positive thinking flows into the workplace. Behavior, good or bad, is infectious, and it for yourselves and others. So there's a real ripple effect when it comes to happiness. So if you surround yourself by happier and more productive people, and you are happier and more productive, then it just ripples around your workplace, and it will help you achieve your goals. So what are the 7 principles? Well, I'm not going to be able to cover them in the 2 minutes. So I'm just going to say their titles, and you can look them up. Principle 1 is actually called the happiness advantage. 2 is Fulford and Weaver. 3 is the Tetris effect. 4 is flowing up. 5 is the Zorro circle. 6 is the 20-second rule. And 7 is social investment. I would actually recommend this book. I'm going to buy this book. I actually really enjoyed reading. This was probably my favorite book of the actual class. So that's awesome, Group 2. Thank you.
See, I guess that's it. We had David and Goliath was a book. Anybody want to say something about David and Goliath? How many groups read David and Goliath? You want to make a comment on David and Goliath?
There's no question.
Sure.
So I'm going to stand up here. David and Goliath was basically the premise that oftentimes we view people or entities as having advantages that actually are disadvantages, just due to conventional wisdom. And many times we need to reevaluate how we're approaching things in order to be able to better take advantage of what will really give us an advantage to win in the end. So for example, they talked about David and Goliath, obviously. David was like the equivalent of having a 45 going up against someone that only had a sword, which was what really happened because he had a sling, just right in the head, and it was game over. And then other similar things that happened. For example, in California, they had this 3 strikes rule because some guy wanted to lower crime by saying you're a repeat criminal, you should be in jail for life. And then there was another, like a Mennonite family that their daughter was killed, and they chose to forgive instead of lash out. And that served to lower crime, at least not to increase crime as it did in California. And just other small things like that. Didn't off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you. See, there was another book, was the seven tipping points that saved the world. Everybody read that book? Any groups read that one? No, we did. One group? You want to give us 60 seconds on that? 7 tipping points?
So the 7 tipping points essentially are the 7 tipping points that led us having freedom today. The author found 7 points in the world's history where if it would have gone differently, we would have been enslaved by another nation, or we wouldn't have this notion of freedom we have today. So essentially all the freedom that we have is owed to the war by the Assyrians in Israel, the Spartans in Greece, Battle of Britain, the Roman Empire and adopting Christianity, and then discovery of the New World.
Islam trying to work on France?
Yeah, Islam trying to take over France. And then, is that 7? Yep. Okay, cool. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. There was one more about what the Voyage of Discovery. Did the group read that book? Okay. That's kind of a funny book. It's a about a U.S. expedition. This is in the 1840s. And they went to chart and map the Pacific Ocean. And the commander of the fleet was a complete disaster. But it was a horrible experience for everybody. But in the end, they achieved great things. So it's kind of this, well, how could they achieve such great things with such a poor leader? Kind of the opposite of Shackleton. So it's kind of a interesting book. Okay, well, great. That's all I have for today. I'll see you on Monday, and pick up your books.
All right, kids.